Good morning, everyone. Today is the big day. Welcome to the Educator Collaborative's 5th Ed Collab gathering. I can't tell you how excited we all are seeing all of you on social media, also hearing from many of you in person. I was just in Vermont yesterday and talking to some educators there, and people were saying, oh, we're so excited for tomorrow. This day is just an incredible celebration of what we do as educators, as authors, as learners, as leaders, as coaches. It's all about coming together to share our great work, to inspire one another, and ultimately to support our students. So thank you for being here with us. Those of you that are watching with the team, hello to all of you who are crowded around the computer, or there are some of you who already started to tweet using hashtag the Ed Collab gathering that you are, like someone said, they're with their dogs on their porch right now. That looks really beautiful. Some of you are in PJs. I will not admit if I'm wearing pajamas below the waist or not. I may have a suit. I may also have pajama pants. I probably have pajama pants, but we're so happy to bring this to you. It's a way that we can come together as an educator community. I just wanted to say hi to the many of you tuning in, and here I have it right here. So right now, it looks like we have folks tuning in from the US. Hello, Canada, Kuwait, the US Virgin Islands, Australia, Vietnam, Mexico, Japan, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, and the list goes on and on. Ecuador, hi Ecuador, Taiwan, Colombia, Turkey, Ireland, Netherlands, Luxembourg, oh my gosh, Ukraine, Belize, United Kingdom, Qatar, Puerto Rico, Switzerland, Chile, hello, hello, hello. We're so happy to have you here. So a couple of important announcements about how this day will run. Don't mind me for just a second as I share a couple of slides with you. I had a super fancy setup that Phil Bildner showed me just a second ago that now I'm not going to be able to recreate. So let's see if we can do this. Okay, so a couple of quick announcements as we go here. So number one, is that today, as you are viewing sessions, you'll use hashtag the Ed Collab gathering. This will be a way that you can talk over Twitter. You'll be able to share great things that you're learning, also communicate with each other and with the presenters as well. When you are inside of oops, sorry, it says not showing to anyone. Sorry about that. Present to everyone. There we go. Thank you. Okay, here we go. There. So you'll need to use hashtag the Ed Collab gathering. Our fantastic tech team from around the world is also texting me as we work and letting me know if they can see things. Yes, you can see it. Thank you. Thanks, Amy. So now you can see what I meant to show you. So today, as you're viewing, you'll use hashtag the Ed Collab gathering. It's the way you'll be able to talk with other educators who are viewing. You'll be able to communicate with us here at the Ed Collab. During the opening keynote, starting in just a moment here, and okay, it keeps disappearing. So I will talk instead of showing. So during the opening keynote and during, oh, here's the very last chance. And then if this doesn't work, I'll just talk. So during the opening keynote, closing keynote, you'll just use hashtag the Ed Collab gathering. During actual sessions, there's one other thing that you'll add. Hashtag the Ed Collab gathering, space, hashtag the number of the session. And that will allow you to communicate directly with the presenters of that session. So if you're viewing, like the example here, if you're viewing session 1, you'll do hashtag the Ed Collab gathering, space, hashtag 1. Down a little bit farther, if you are viewing session 14, hashtag the Ed Collab gathering, space, hashtag session 14. That is your way of asking questions to the presenters, communicating with them. We know in almost every session, the presenters are looking forward to hearing from you. So that's your main way of communicating with us today. All day we have Choose Your Own Adventure sessions. At the end of the day at 3 o'clock, we hope you'll be able to join us. We're so excited to have our friend and colleague Roussel Arlubail and myself doing a session called Caring for Our Kids. supporting immigrant and refugee children in our schools. So that will kick off at 3 p.m. Eastern at the end of today, and you'll find that directly on our website. So our full agenda, just in case you're watching this on a device, perhaps on YouTube, the full agenda can be found at gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com. And the really super great news is that if you miss any session, they are all archived. You can go right back to them to see at any time. So it's one of those conferences, you know how you go somewhere to like a conference and you wish that you could duplicate yourself? You sort of kind of can do that today. You can watch one thing you'd like and then go somewhere else. So here's a little snapshot of my life. I was just in Vermont yesterday for the Vermont Council on Reading Conference, which was lovely in Burlington, Vermont. Just amazing, dedicated, heartfelt educators coming together to talk about their craft. It was an inspiring day, and I loved being there. But if you live anywhere in kind of the central US all the way over to the east, this is what the last 2 days looked like: storms everywhere. So that blue dot there is where I live in New York. And then I was traveling to Washington, D.C. to then connect to go up to Burlington all on Thursday. And yep, that was my flight path. So what should have been 2 hours of travel actually turned into 14. So I had 14 hours of sitting in airports, getting on planes, getting off of planes, going back onto planes again, going back into the airport. If you've ever been stuck in an airport, you know it's not necessarily the most fun place to be. So the day just seemed to go on and just seemed to feel worse and worse as we went. And it was not so fun. But what happened is finally we took off. Like finally we got to the spot where, yes, we can go. We're up in the air. Now we can go. And what I saw as I was taking off was this. And let's see if I can, I shouldn't have taken off my screen. Let's see if I can get this to work again. What I saw was this. This incredible view of New York City that I had never seen before. There was fog rolling across the city that I love. There was sun in the sky that was breaking through the clouds below. You can see the tiny city off in the background. I'll stop sharing. That beautiful scene, I only was able to see because I went through all of the junk, because I went through all of the tough stuff too. And as we're gathering together here today and getting ready to share this incredible conference and this amazing time to be together, I think it's important that we acknowledge and then have faith. We acknowledge that there's a lot happening in our world now that isn't the way it should be. There are a lot of adults making decisions that are affecting the lives of children and will continue to affect the lives of children going forward. There are a lot of adults who are making decisions that affect the people that we serve every day in our classrooms. There are people that are deciding who's allowed to live their true selves and who's not, who's allowed to be treated as a human, who's allowed to be safe. We're going through arguably a terrible time. It's certainly light years beyond being stuck in an airport. People's lives are truly in danger. And that is real and true, and we need to acknowledge that. There also, though, with the power of us, this educator community, this writer community, this researcher community, this leader community, we serve future adults. We serve the people who will take on those roles in the future, the people who will decide who's valued and who's not, and what matters and what decisions to make. We right now have the power and the ability to take off in the sky through the garbage, through the terrible day, and see off in the horizon a beautiful view of the city that we love, or the community that we love, or frankly, the world that we love too. And that's no small thing. Right now, more than ever, the literacy work that we do is not just about school. The literacy work that we do is really about changing the lives of children so they can change our lives. That's what we need now more than ever. Today is full of sessions of people celebrating ways to do just that. And in particular, we have this incredible session coming up next. So let me do one more kind of wonky, trying to get the slide to work. And I hope that this does, because I want to celebrate them a little bit. And I'm also talking to my tech team here to say, is this working? In our opening session here, starting in just a moment, we have three incredible authors, Phil Bildner, Elizabeth Acevedo, and Olubemisola Rude-Perkovic, and their session is on celebrating student voice. Phil Bildner is author of many incredible books for young adults and children. I know you love, because I love it too, Marvelous Cornelius, and his brand new book, Martina and Chrissy, The Greatest Rivalry in the History of Sports, has just come out recently, and are all incredible, empowering, and do the work that Phil does in life, in his advocacy, he does through his books as well. Elizabeth Acevedo is author of Beast Girl and Other Origin Myths, her collection of poems. She has a novel that's coming out shortly. And by the way, if you have not, although I'm sure you have, but if you have not, be sure to visit Acevedo Poetry to see her spoken word videos. Can I just say, there are many that I love, especially Hair. I would say go on YouTube or go onto her website, find Elizabeth Acevedo, Hair, and just the first moments of the crowd going, yeah, the second she starts talking will just blow your mind. And then we're also so lucky to have with us here today Olubemisola Rude-Perkovic. She's the author of 8th Grade Super Zero and Two Naomis, which, by the way, I have been carrying with me through these terrible flights. I've been reading it. It's actually gotten me through. It is a beautiful, brilliant book. I didn't tell you this earlier, Olubemisola, but I've actually, for several weeks now, because it's been in my bag, I continue to tell people and share at conferences. It's one of the books I hold up and say, you got to have this in your hand right now. So in thinking about our work going forward and how critically important it is that we embrace and hold on to our power as supporting those future adults, I want to bring you to one way that we always use the gathering. There's so many of you here that have been with us before, but I know that there's many of you who are joining for the first time. So here's how the EdCollab gathering always works. It's a totally free day. There's no registration. It's basically an entire mega conference, like a conference you might fly across the country for and pay a registration fee and buy lunch and stay in a hotel. It's all of that, only online, free for you. It's our gift for the education community. But we do ask you to do this, to consider paying this joy that you have today forward. In just a moment, our authors, and I believe they'll introduce a bit, we'll introduce you to 3 incredible charities that you can find on our Gathering website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com/charity. Every gathering, we ask our keynote, our morning keynote, to choose a charity or charities to pay the joy forward. So we'll ask you, just before I pass it over to our morning keynote here, if you love something from today, consider what you might pay for a cup of coffee or a lunch, or even for a registration. And please visit one or all of our charities for today. We'll say them: Urban Word New York City, Urban Creators, and Morningside Center for Teaching Social Responsibility. These are incredible advocacy groups that support children, support young adults, support adults. And you paying forward what you would have paid to have this amazing day will help them do the incredible work they need to do. And if there's another charity you want to use, pay it forward there as well too. But we just hope that you'll take whatever joy you gather from learning today and go forward. And then one last thing before I pass it over. Something could go wrong today. Your computer may not work. The internet might break. Something could happen. There's a couple of ways that you can make sure you don't miss out. Number one, everything's being archived. So if you miss a session, you'll just come back later. You'll see it. If you need to, follow us on YouTube at the EdCollab, and there will be posting the direct YouTube links all day long. And there also already is one glitch that's happened. There's a couple of sessions today where when you go to the session page, the video is not embedding correctly. When you go there, there'll be a link to take you directly to the YouTube video. So see, there's already an issue that's come up, but we'll solve it with you. Lastly, you can click on Help at the top of our website, and there are a bunch of information, including a link to a different website in case this one is acting funky for you, that's a little bit slimmer, and you can get to videos really quickly. So thank you all for being here, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce our friends here, and I'll pass it over to, I think, to you, Phil, correct?
Excellent, yes.
Thank you, and thank you, Phil, for being here.
Sure, I'm thrilled to be here. Excellent. So, hey everybody, okay, I'm Phil Bildner, and I am super excited to be kicking off this day of learning. I'm so happy to be part of the Ed Collaborative gathering. So last summer when Chris first reached out to me, he said, he shared with me his vision for what he wanted today to be all about. And essentially what he did was, he said he wanted to gather a small group of author and illustrator activists who would speak about something that spoke to them. So automatically, right away, the synapses started rapid firing and the gears kicked into overdrive. And within a few days, we assembled a crew of 3 of us here who are going to speak to you this morning. And we wanted to talk about something that spoke to us, and we wanted to speak about student voice. But more importantly, we want to talk about celebrating and amplifying student voice. So that's what we're going to be talking about in our keynote this morning. So I'm going to let them each introduce themselves briefly, and then we'll come back to me, and then we're going to kick off the day. So Bemi, I'm going to send it over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Phil. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate, Phil, and thank you so much to Chris and the Ed Collaborative team for just making this possible. I'm so excited. I'm Olubemi Sola Rude Perkovic. I'm an author, as Chris mentioned, and I work with We Need Diverse Books and the Brown Bookshelf and a few other literacy advocacy projects. And I am also a parent, so I do talk a lot about just sort of how I found my voice as a student writer and how I'm still finding my voice as a writer, how I work with students to empower them in their writing, and how as a parent I also work with my daughter who is a writer, and how sometimes my role as a parent and my role as a teaching artist sometimes come into, I won't say conflict with each other, but sometimes they butt heads a little bit, and I have to check myself sometimes and remember the things that I teach.
Hi, y'all. I'm good. You can see me. All
hey,
right.
Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes. I can see you. Yes.
Awesome. Sorry, y'all. My name is Elizabeth Acevedo. I am a poet. I'm a writer. I have a young adult novel that's coming out about a young woman who wants to be a poet. And so a lot of my work is centered around how do I encourage young people to write and to find their stories. I became a writer because I had a really nurturing community since I was really young telling me that I had something to say and that I should and could say it. And so I try to pay that forward. And so not only do I tour at different colleges and universities doing spoken word and creative writing workshops, I also go as young as, little ones, kindergartens, all the way up to high school, trying to help students figure out what is it that they have to say and what are ways that they can say it. And so I'm really excited to be here with you all today to think about what are ways that we can bring those same kind of strategies into the classroom.
So I guess it's my turn now, right, Elizabeth?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, excellent. So then I'm going to kick things off. When I visit schools, and I'm fortunate enough that I get to visit schools all around the country and all around the world, I'm of the mind when I go to a school that this could be the first and only time a kid ever gets to see or interact with an author. So I feel as though, and it's something I actually say to myself before I start every presentation, I feel as though I have a moral responsibility, I have an obligation to rock their world, to shatter their paradigm of what an author really is. And so when I visit schools, I often, and I feel as though I need to bring it every time I'm up there. I have my notes on my sides over here. That's why I keep looking over there. I have like my bullet points lined up for me. When I present to kids, these days I open with a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it's a quote that opens my picture book, Marvelous Cornelius, which was inspired by the time I spent down in New Orleans following Hurricane Katrina. So I'm going to say that quote for you so I get to do my little bit of my Elizabeth Acevedo thing here because I get to like recite a quote. So, and it goes something like this. Even if it's called your lot to be a street sweeper, go out and sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Handel and Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts in heaven and earth will have to pause and say, here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well. And to me, that quote means no matter what we do in life, we have to bring it. We always have to give it our all. And as educators, that's something we always need to keep in mind. Every single day, we always need to bring it. And Lord knows some days are absolutely brutal and that is difficult, but we always have to dig deep because it's always about the kids and something we always need to keep sight of. Now, when I walk into a school as the visiting author, I fully understand that I'm a little bit of the celebrity and I'm something I'm never fully comfortable with. But also when I'm around kids, I understand that I have the ability to and power to reinforce messages of community and empathy and understanding and kindness when I'm around kids. And I kind of take the Dr. Maya Angelou approach, and I'm gonna paraphrase something that she said, but it captures her sentiment. And it's that a child's not always gonna remember what you say, and a child isn't always gonna remember what you did, but a child will always remember how you made them feel. And that's something we always need to think about every single day when we set foot in the classroom and when we're around kids. And because you never know if today is the one day when that light bulb is going to go on for a child, when they're going to hear something or something's going to happen and the trajectory, their entire life path is going to change. So, and recently I was at a school in Seaford, Long Island, Seaford Manor Elementary. Shout out to Sam Simon, who was the new librarian who just started there like this year. So, and after the visit, the kids sent me thank you notes, which is a way to celebrate and amplify student voice because it takes their voice and their writings outside of the classroom. And a child sent me a thank you note, and I just want to share it with you if I can get this to work. And it worked so seamlessly earlier, so let's see if we can get it to work now. Of course, I won't be able to, but you never know. And this is the note that she shared with me. She read one of my books, and she saw herself in one of the books because one of the characters was Muslim, and she was so grateful that she got to see herself in books and see herself in a book. And then afterwards, I posted this online. I posted it on Instagram, and her teachers saw it, and the librarian saw it, and then some of her friends saw it, and they liked it, and they were also excited about it also. And it was one way that we can celebrate student voice differently. And because you never know how what you say or what you write or what you text or what you snap, where it's going to end up. Our words are such a powerful thing. Now, all right, I gotta flip my notes on both sides here so to make sure I got okay. Now, we often refer to kids as the next generation, and that's not something I'm very comfortable with. I don't feel as though kids are the next generation. I feel kids are here right now, and they have something meaningful and valuable to contribute, and we always need to figure out different ways to lift up their voices so that they can be heard. And when I'm around kids, this is not a metaphor that I created, but it's one I love to repeat. When I look out at a group of kids in a classroom or I'm standing in an auditorium presenting to kids, I tell kids that I'm seeing stars. But I'm not just seeing stars, I'm seeing constellations, because stars make up constellation, and each star in a constellation contributes and has value and has meaning, and each point of light needs to be celebrated, and each child is that point of light. Okay, do y'all still see me or no? Okay, you still okay? I just want to make sure. Okay, I just because I've got the text box going here, so I just want to make sure y'all can still see. I haven't disappeared. Okay, so as educators, we do have this moral obligation to figure out ways to turn up the mics of children. They have their own mics. We need to figure out ways to amplify their voices and then step aside. We need to be on a relentless quest to do that. And toward that end, I want to focus on the 5 cornerstones of student-centered learning. And I learned about these 5 cornerstones from Dr. Brad Gustafson, and I think I pronounced his name correctly. And if I didn't, I apologize. And if I didn't, I also get to blame Tony Sinanas, who's an assistant superintendent in Plain Edge, New York, because he told me I could. So thanks, Tony. I appreciate that. So I learned about the 5 cornerstones through Brad, and I've known about his work for a while. Brad's a principal. He's an educator at a elementary school, a public elementary school. He's a public elementary principal in a suburb of Minneapolis, in Minnesota. And in fact, I got to visit Brad's school in December, only I didn't know I was visiting Brad's school until afterwards. So here are these 5 cornerstones of student-centered learning. And once again, I'm going to try and share my screen and get this to work. And I will. I have confidence in myself this time. All right, here we go. All right, so the first one is notice and nurture student talent. We have to always be on the lookout. We have to always be looking for it. It's part of that relentless, endless quest. And I'm actually glad that I was able to say notice and nurture, because in practice, every time I say it, I always say notice and note, because I'm always thinking of the Kylene Beers and Bob Prost book. So like, I actually got it almost correct this time. The second thing is provide a listening ear, an authentic audience for student talent. And by authentic, it's got to be caring, it's got to be meaningful, it's got to be safe. And relatedly, I kind of feel as though when we interact with kids, we're all addicted to our screens. We got to look away from the laptop, look away from the tablets, look away from our screens, and give our students that undivided attention. They really let them be heard and let them know that we're listening to them. The third thing is get to know each student's heart so that you can reach each student's mind. And this is also connected to that whole concept of listening to kids. Because when we do listen to kids, we have 2 ears and only one mouth, so we should be listening twice as much as we speak. So when we do listen to kids, we understand, we can learn so much about them. The fourth one is relationships in school are a team effort. And since today is so much about collaboration, it really is. And as you can see already, these 5 tenets, these 5 cornerstones, they're not mutually exclusive. They are all interactive. They are all related to one another. And finally, the 5th one is kids win when their relationships and opportunities are not limited to the confines of their classrooms. Now, to me, what these 5 cornerstones always mean, what it always comes back to, is essentially, be human, be real. Now, of course, for me, as someone who's no longer in the classroom anymore, it's easy for me to say this. And as a former teacher, I taught middle school in the New York City public schools for 11 years. So shout out to my middle school students and middle school teachers everywhere. So it's easy for me to say, do this, do that. And as a teacher, I couldn't stand when people outside the classroom knew better. But since I get to visit schools all over the place, I get to see best practices in place and working in so many different places. I have this front row seat, and it's exciting, it's invigorating, and it's so affirming also. So I want to share some of these today, and hopefully there's a chance maybe you're even doing some of these already, or if not, maybe something you hear right now is going to inspire you to do something, or perhaps you're doing something already and it will encourage you or enable you to take things to the next level. So I want to go back to Brad's school for a second in Minnesota when I visited there in December, and Brad introduced me to a 4th grader named Paolo while I was there. But I don't want to do that. Okay, can you hear me now again? Good, okay, thanks. All right, so excellent. So he introduced me to this 4th grader named Paolo. And his kid, he loved graphic novels, and he loved to write graphic novels and comics, and he'd been doing it for years, and he loved to write in the style of Dave Pilkey and Captain Underpants. And all throughout his elementary career, all the teachers in the school, it really was a combined effort with the teachers and the librarians and the administrators to encourage it and nurture this, because the kid was so connected to it. So finally, when I went to visit his school, the teachers set aside time at lunch where I was actually able to sit with Paolo. And when I did, he shared with me his comics. And they were really good, but unfortunately, there's so much going on at a school visit that I could not get to spend the amount of time that I really wanted to spend with him. But I did write, keep on writing on top of this page of the comic that he was working on, and I asked him to send it to me when he was done. And when he did send it to me, it was done. It wasn't just good, it was really good. So I reached out to Brad again, and I told him that I had a little bit of a plan, that I wanted to send it to Dave Pilkey, and maybe we'd get a response, and maybe we'd do that. Well, I learned about these 5 cornerstones from a blog on Brad's website, and he wrote about the experience, and he wrote about what happened. And I did also, there's a blog called Dave Pilkey is a Superhero, a real life superhero. That's on my website also. If you ever need an uplifting moment, or you that you're doing the right thing, take a few minutes to read these blogs. And Brad's blog, both the blogs actually have video of the moment when Paolo got this letter from Dave Pilkey, and I'm going to see if I can share it with you right now. I'll give you a second to read it. This is Paolo, and this is what he got from Dave, and hopefully you can like read that letter. Now, of course, we're not always going to be able to create moments like this for every child. That's fully understandable. But when we post things on blogs, when we post things on Padlet, perhaps encourage people outside the confines of the classroom to like, give a thumbs up, say great job, because you never underestimate the power of a child seeing that encouragement outside the classroom. And I'm going to go back to that momentarily as well. And Paolo's sending me his next comic, and I cannot wait to read it also, because one day he's going to be delivering the keynote like this. I have no doubt in my mind. Is that good of a kid and that talented a kid. Another way we can celebrate and amplify student voice and simultaneously, foster empathy and community is through reading aloud. Reading aloud is one of the best ways to develop a lifelong love for reading. It's the shared learning experience that brings kids together, that builds community and builds empathy. And we should be reading out loud every single day to our students. I read out loud every single day to my middle school kids. And I also read picture books. You are never too old for picture books. I love it. I just had to say that, okay? And not just because I write picture books. But not only should we be reading out loud to kids, kids can also be reading out loud also. They can be sharing their work with younger kids, and they can be sharing the work of others with younger kids as well, or with people in their community. And lately I've been going back to the book Wonder, which so many kids, especially 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, are familiar with that book. Either they've read it on their own by R.J. Palacio, or they've had it read to them. Well, last week, the picture book version of the book called We're All Wonders, also by R.J. Palacio, came out, and it debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. So shout out to Raquel, congratulations, okay, which is so exciting. But now we have older kids reading this picture book to younger kids and spreading this message of kindness, empathy, and community. And that's something we all so desperately need at these times. So it's just another way that we can celebrate, students and sharing what they have, because they have so much to offer. And also related to this, other ways we can share it. They can create podcasts. They can create book trails. I saw at one school where during the morning announcements, kids would read the excerpts of a book they were reading. And it was just so exciting. Like, I've seen one book, one school, but this is where one child is just sharing what they're reading. And, and when other kids hear it, it's kind of cool. All right, next. Speaking of other ways to share student work, and Elizabeth, I think you were here to see this, which is kind of cool. I visited a school in Alexandria, Virginia earlier in the week. And at the school, the 3rd graders had just finished a project where they wrote their own nonfiction books. And after they finished the nonfiction books, the teachers put them in the library. And the librarian, displayed them and also made them available for checkout. So the other kids could read them and see them. And when parents came to the school, they could see their child's work and other child's work on display. And I was in the library, and I got to read some of them. And some of them were really good. So when the 3rd graders came in the afternoon, I got to say, who wrote the basketball one? Who wrote the cooking one? And the cooking one was really good. It was filled with recipes. And who wrote the one about the Dominican Republic? And who wrote the one about Ben Franklin? And the librarian was so grateful that, someone was acknowledging their work, be outside of the classroom. And that's just another way that we can, acknowledge it. And just what that once again goes back to what we can do on Padlet, what we can do with blogs, and what we can do with social media. Authors are pretty accessible, and illustrators are pretty accessible. If we tweet something out or put something on Instagram, you are going to get a response of some kind. And that retweet or that like, it's a 21st century autograph, and it has an immeasurable value for so many kids. Now, also, I want to talk lastly about middle school kids, because middle school kids, they are near and dear to my heart, and those inherently cynical middle school kids, and we're always looking for entry points and ways and inroads and ways to connect with them. So in this political climate, and I'm not going to go there because it's just too depressing for me right now, but we have to utilize this political climate to empower kids. And so what I'm finding right now, and I've seen this in practice, and I've seen it reported on in the news as well, where kids are learning. We need to teach kids about media literacy. And when they learn about media literacy, we need to know the difference between fake news and real news. And then once kids learn about that, especially on middle schools. Let's give them the agency. Let's say, okay, now it's your job to teach other people about this. You know, have them create PSAs, have them teach the younger kids the difference between fake and real, have them teach their parents, because Lord knows we're all having difficulty discerning between what is real and what is not. And then perhaps have them do a community, something that could be posted on the school website, or could be streamed live, or posted on a dedicated Instagram, or a dedicated, you know, some type of dedicated social media account that other people can see. I've also seen this, like, and they can also do it at a back to school night as well. And I've seen the flip template work in a number of places. And I'll say that I actually saw it at Tony Sinanis' former elementary school, the Caniac Elementary School, where on back to school night, he had the kids, the older kids, teach parents how to use Twitter and how to use social media, and it created transparency. And it was like, and it was so great way to bring community together and bring the learning together and create a community of learners. So I think I'm going to take a breath right now, and I'm going to hand it off to Bemi, and I'm going to let her do her thing, and then I'm going to go from there. So, all right, I survived. Cool.
Phil, that was awesome. I want to have like a class, a permanent class, just so I can have you come visit us and talk and present. That was amazing. Thank you. So I'm going to sort of piggyback on a lot of what Phil said and talk about writing. And I was going back and forth about sharing some slides. I'm just going to share a couple. This first one is sort of about what I believe about writing. And this is from the organization Lit World Says. They started World Read Aloud Day, and they do a lot of literacy projects. They're an amazing organization. And the act of writing stories, of telling one's own stories, is not just about expression. It is about transformation. And that is really sort of my guiding principle when it comes to writing. So I write for a lot of reasons. And when my first book was published, a blogger asked me the simple question, why do you write? And it really stopped me cold. As much as I've written and thought about writing and sort of talked to students about writing, that question for me, why do I write, really made me think. And the first thing I had to do to sort of figure out my answer was write. So I had to start writing to figure it out. And that's really what I try and share and teach when I'm asked to teach writing. I don't really see myself as a teacher. I'm like a collaborator. I'm really sort of working to encourage whoever I'm writing with to share their story, for us to have conversations about their stories. It's really more an act of empowerment. That's what I think is the most important thing, is empowering writers to share their stories, because I tell students always, your story is precious, your story is valuable, and your story matters. And I was fortunate because I grew up in an environment where I was a very quiet and shy kid, but I was always sort of encouraged to embrace the power of story and the power of words. And I grew up in a very print-rich home, literacy-rich home. We had books everywhere. I had access to all of them. I was sort of allowed to just go on the shelves and pick whatever I wanted to read. So sometimes I read a few things that I probably wasn't ready for, but it was good. And eventually I was ready for them, and I got to think about them and sort of write about them in my journal. And I would write for my little sister, write stories. We weren't allowed to watch very much TV, so I would pretend to have watched shows and sort of write little scripts about the shows that we weren't allowed to watch and do things like that. And my father was like very into fountain pens when I was a kid, and we would spend hours, what I thought were really long, boring hours in like pen stores, where he would spend all this time choosing a fountain pen and writing and testing the ink and all this stuff. But it sort of reinforced the power and the joy someone can find in writing and sort of taking ownership of the process of writing. And in school, sometimes when I just didn't really like an assignment, or I was sort of not happy with an assignment, I would sort of use all of that I had gotten at home to be a little creative. And so I would do the assignment, but I might do it a little differently. I might add a little. I might doodle and like add some artwork. I would find a way to sort of put my story and my point of view into whatever I was writing for school, whether it was an essay, a book report, everything. And I do encourage students to do that and say that I tell them you're expressing something about yourself and it matters. When I was in high school and I wanted to go to parties and things like that, my father would have me write essays. I guess they'd be called persuasive essays to convince him to allow me to go to the party. So I would write them because I wanted to go. And I sort of learned through that way, even though I was quiet and shy, and I ended up participating in theater and things like that to help me speak up. But I learned through that way to do what Bell Hooks calls talking back through writing and express myself through writing. And William Zinsser, I'm going to pull up a little old school quote, but he says, the very act of writing enables us to find out what we know and what we don't know about whatever we're trying to learn. And I love that in cognitive science, writing is described as an ill-defined problem. In a book by John Brewer called Schools for Thought that I love, he says that writing is something for which there is no ready-made best initial representation and no standard solution. And I love thinking about that, especially now when we talk so much about standards and we talk so much about rubrics and maybe 5-paragraph structures and clear topic sentences and neat conclusions. I think we lose a lot of that valuable and really transferable, those reasons to write, to think about our thinking, to sort of work out how these thoughts will play out in our daily lives. So I really think that authentic, meaningful writing instruction can be used to process and reflect on our ideas, our communities, our education itself, and our global society. So that is what I try and share all the time when I'm with students and when I'm writing. And when I go into classrooms and do presentations, a lot of times when we get to sort of the workshop part of things, the first thing the students ask is, am I allowed to? And then whatever it is they want to do. And I'm always like, of course, sure. Like, this is your story. This is your work. This is your thing. And you don't have to ask me for permission, but it makes me a little sad that it takes them a while to really believe me and to really think that they have agency over their own stories, over their own words. And so I have written about this before, and I say whenever students ask in writing, am I allowed to? The answer is just yes, 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 yes. And I have, for my daughter's second grade class, she's in middle school now, just finishing up middle school, but her second grade teacher gave me this incredible folder of letters that she would have students write to each other when there had been a conflict or some kind of problem in the class. And so rather than have maybe sort of an old school, like writing the same sentence over and over or something, she would have them write letters to each other, sometimes to another student's parent. And so I'm going to share a couple of lines from a few of them because some of them are hilarious. But what I most appreciate is that they clearly had freedom to write whatever was on their minds in whatever words they wanted to use. Some of the language, I was like, whoa, second grade. I didn't know some kids knew these words. I'm not going to share those. But some of them are so simple. Like this one from a boy, he says, banging does not help because people need to work. And he just had to write that to understand, one, that, yeah, he could stop the banging and remember that he was in a community of people who were all working together. Here's one. Dear Justin's mom, Justin pushed me and now I walk crooked. He hurt me very bad and I can't walk that good. And it hurts that I can't walk. It hurts very, very bad. You should ground him for 2 days. I don't like him. He hurt me really bad. He wasn't that badly hurt, I found out. When I was reading this, I was like, whoa. Show this letter to his dad and let him deal with it too. He hurt me really bad. So I just want you to know this, Justin's mom. There's another Justin one I won't share. But this one, and this is sort of like that freedom stuff, this was a really angry letter where a student is just like, you are stupid, is what the student said. And the teacher sort of allowed the student to write all of these things down. They didn't necessarily give this letter to to these people, but they had a conversation afterward. And sort of having that conversation and that writing experience was really important. So I love that they had the freedom there to sort of write what they were thinking and feel empowered by saying, okay, I'm hurt by this, or I'm angry about this. And that matters. So it's not just about like getting to like, okay, let's just work this out and move on, but acknowledging their feelings through writing. So I thought that was really wonderful and important. Okay, I'm going to share another quote. Let's see if this works. This is a quote by the author and activist Eboo Patel. And he says, maybe not. We live in a world where the forces that seek to divide us are strong. And to overcome them, we must do more than simply stand next to one another in silence. And so when I think about writing and teaching writing, I'm thinking about writing to examine, writing to empower. And I'll talk a little bit about some of my daughter's experiences here as both a middle school student, and she does some writing as a kid reporter for a few different organizations. So she actually had an interesting time sort of going through this process of reflection and transformation. I'll say first in school. So she's been in middle school through this whole election process here in the States. And, you know, it's been emotional. It's been, for a lot of students like her, very upsetting. And so while they were in 7th grade, they were studying the books Animal Farm, To Kill a Mockingbird, and they were studying the Russian Revolution. And for one of her projects, she decided that she was going to write about how she felt that her school had an annual ice skating trip to a rink in New York City, in Central Park, that is now partially owned by Donald Trump and the Trump organization. And some of the students in the school felt really strongly, this was before the actual election happened, but they felt strongly that they did not want to participate in this trip anymore, that the school shouldn't be going on this trip. Some of the students felt that they should go on the trip and protest while they were on the trip. And some of the students felt that they just wanted to go on the trip and ice skate, and you know, people who had a problem with it could just not go. So there was a lot of discussion, and the school administration and leadership really allowed that to happen in the humanities classes they had. They did homework assignments about it. They had school-wide town meeting. They have a town meeting every week. So that was part of the conversation. And so there was a whole lot of conversation. And in the end, the school decided to continue with the trip. And the students who were not happy about it were taken by some teachers to another part of Central Park. They didn't go to the rink. And so sort of all three groups participated in their way. But my daughter was still not very happy about it. And so she decided for her final project, she was going to write a paper about why she felt that the students who were opposed to the trip, even if they were in the minority, should have had their voices heard and should have been empowered, and should have sort of won the day. So she took sort of what they had learned about propaganda and Animal Farm and how she felt she had negative feelings about the book To Kill a Mockingbird, which I do as well. And I tried not to sort of transfer that to her, but she didn't like the book, but what she took from the book was a closing argument that Atticus Finch made. And she also looked at the O.J. Simpson trial in the 90s and those arguments that the lawyers made. So she put all of that together. I didn't even read this paper till recently. She wrote it last year. So she put all of that together and wrote this closing argument where she was sort of putting her school on trial and saying, like, these are the reasons why we should not have participated in this action. And this is what this meant. And it's important to listen to different voices at different times, empower different voices at different times. And so even though I didn't read the actual paper till later, just watching her sort of work through that and take what was happening in the country and take what she was learning in school and take our conversations and put all of that into an assignment was such a valuable and important thing. And I credit her school for creating that environment where she didn't feel like she had to separate everything, and that like schoolwork just had to be about like sort of what they did in the classroom. But like as Phil said, she's bringing in all of what was happening outside of the classroom into her work was empowering. And she ended up, they started like a politics club at school after that and doing a lot of things. So I think that also was very empowering to sort of see maybe not the change she wanted to see happen or she thought she wanted to see happen, but to see things happen as a result of what she wrote. That was a very important thing. And then for her as a kid reporter, also during the selection time, she really struggled sometimes with the idea of journalistic bias and sort of remaining unbiased and reporting objectively and sort of being in the middle of things or hearing things that she thought were wrong, and how to sort of report on that and how to talk about that and navigate that as a middle schooler was really challenging for her. But it was such a wonderful learning experience. And I really encourage schools, communities, there's so many different youth newspapers and things like that that you can use to sort of empower children to really use their voices. Even in she wrote an article about the middle school process as she was applying to middle school. And not only did it help her sort of make decisions and choose, but sort of bringing in other people and feeling like she had a purpose, that she was helping other students make these decisions was a big deal for her. I'm going to run through really quick because I want to get through some other stuff. So writing to empower, writing to examine, writing to question. So when I'm working with students, almost everything I do when I'm doing a workshop can be boiled to one question, which is, what do you mean? That's really what I'm asking. What do you really mean? I ask, what do you want to say? How do you want the person who's reading this to feel? What do you think can happen with this? Why did you think that you needed to write this piece? Where did this story come from? Those are the questions that I ask over and over again as part of the writing process, because I think that the planning part of the writing process and the revision part of the writing process are sort of those are the parts that I weight the most. The first draft, the drafting part, maybe because I am such a horrible first drafter and I struggle with it so much, I kind of downplay that. But I think the planning, which is not just writing, it's a lot of conversation. I think it's so helpful to really conference with students and have students conference with each other about their writing and to ask each other these questions and to sort of think and think and think. I tell students about with my books that I spend a lot of time writing without actually writing on the paper. I think about it while I'm walking. I jot down notes. I doodle. I show them my messy notebooks when I'm visiting or when I'm doing Skypes to show them that it's not just like a linear, neat 1, 2, 3 step process, but it is messy and it can get uncomfortable. So I want to talk for a second about writing in discomfort, because I think that when we're asking students to write and to be empowered and to share something about themselves and to listen, it can cause discomfort. And I really, really stress that discomfort is okay. Like, discomfort is good. Being uncomfortable is good. We challenge ourselves, we learn, and we grow. And I know it's hard, and especially sometimes when we're the authority figure or supposed to be the person in charge or in power, it can feel like losing control. And sometimes kids ask questions and we don't know the answers. And I know when I first started working with students, I would feel this compulsion to always have the answer and to always have something to say and like pull something out of the air to have an answer. And I've learned to be able to say, I don't know, or let's talk about this together. And maybe even if we talk and talk and talk, we will not come to a conclusion. I'm going over, so I'm going to try and wrap up really quickly. I'm sorry. Elizabeth, I'm going to just turn it over to you. I'm not even going to share the last quote. So I'm going to skip more right into question. I'll just run through a few tools that I use. I talked about asking questions. Another thing that I do is I stress giving students time to write. So even if it's 5 minutes, when students come into the classroom, I say, write down as a list, as a paragraph, whatever you want, however you want to write it, what you did in the last 24 hours or this morning, and what did you notice? So what you did and what you noticed sort of helps you start thinking about who you are and what matters to you. And then once you're thinking about what matters to you, because I tell students that's what you write about, what matters to you, what's important to you. And we do that every day or however the workshop works. I believe in offering choice. And I believe in making lists, doodling, all those things. I ask students for book recommendations. I believe in lunchtime book clubs where I ask students to take books of their choice and then write for their peers and write to them about why they should read these books. So we do that a lot. And I always see my role as sort of supporting educators so that I can come in at lunchtime or come in and visit the classroom and sort of piggyback on what they're doing because I have a little more freedom as a teaching artist who can sort of support their work. And so I am going to leave it and turn it over to Elizabeth now with one last quote from Gwendolyn Brooks in her poem, Paul Robeson, where she says, "We are each other's business, we are each other's harvest, we are each other's magnitude and bond." And I know that this is so hard. It's challenging. There's so much that educators, the pressure that's on you, the politics of education now, it's just overwhelming sometimes. But we have each other, and gatherings like this just are so heartening and just exciting for me because we can sort of work together to work through this. And we have both a responsibility and an opportunity. I mean, this is a wonderful opportunity to strengthen our communities, to strengthen ourselves, to strengthen our students, and to empower them. And I just love the ways that writing can do that. So Elizabeth, I'm going to turn it over to you. And
awesome.
Thank you.
That was incredible. I was like sitting here taking all these notes. I think I'm going to echo so much of what you said. That was really beautiful, Benny.
Thank you.
I remember being a young person and feeling like I had this secret part of myself who was a poet and who was a writer and who was thinking about my neighborhood. And that part of myself was not for school, right? This is like this part of myself I was so proud of, but it didn't belong in the classroom. And when a teacher started asking me about my writing and allowed me to turn my writing in and read my journal, I started feeling like there was this integration of who I was and what I cared about, and that it did have a place in the classroom. And I think I became a better student because of that, because now this teacher was invested in what I had to say, and I knew it mattered, and I knew I could use my writing to communicate things that maybe I wasn't going to be able to communicate in our 45-minute class. And I want to show you all a couple of slides because it's actually, a story that I think, matters a lot to me. So that teacher was Phil. So Phil was my 6th and 8th grade teacher, and this is a copy of a poem that I wrote, and you can tell I have the arrows pointing to the margins because Phil was really strict about margins. And I look at this bottom at this quote, right? "This is beautiful. Keep writing. Does your poem have a title? Maybe in the next part you can discuss why the person is so sad." Right? And this was me. This was me being sad and writing about it and having a teacher say, "Tell me more." Right? And that mattered so much that it was called beautiful, that there was a second piece this person was already imagining. All of a sudden, I had an audience for my work. And I'm really thinking about, as we're talking through, how do we center student voices? Well, we have to give them center stage, right? Like the teacher walks in, and I was an 8th grade teacher, and I would walk in, and it was a kind of performance. Now I'm Miss Acevedo, and learning, I have to step out and let a student kind of step in was scary, but was this moment of their voice has to matter just as much as mine, right? Phil encouraged me to write a letter to Angela Johnson when I was a 6th grader. And I never thought an author would read my letter. I didn't think that would matter. And I read her book, Heaven, and I loved her book, Heaven. And there was a character I wanted to know more about. And so that's what I wrote my letter. I want to know more about the second character. I want to know more about how they came to be. And Angela Johnson wrote the first part last, and then she dedicated that book to me. And so now I realize not only do my words matter to my teacher, now my words matter to this author who listened to me, and now my name is in print. And that story, this idea of your name being in print, of your story mattering, of your words mattering, I think really took hold at a time, particularly in middle school, when I felt like I was just throwing thoughts into the world and no one was listening and nothing was sticking. And that was super important. You know, on the left, you're probably seeing a picture of me as a 14-year-old on stage. And I was super nervous about performing my poetry. And I tried to bow out the day before this poetry slam. And my high school teacher was kind of like, you have to do it and just take the risk and see what happens. And the picture on the right is myself with my students in Washington, D.C. after they had just won a national poetry slam. And, you know, they're all same age I was when I first started slamming. And so I think the reason I have given so much to young people is because so much was given to me. And that is, you know, an incredibly important part and aspect of my life. Is like, I would not be here if all of these folks didn't say, like, your voice matters. And not just that your voice matters, because I think the writing is such a pivotal part of it, right? But that there is something about performance, about giving someone a literal stage and saying, and now I'm going to give you an audience, that creates a different kind of pressure. Because if I was just writing and it was secret and Phil was the only person seeing that ever, there's a way in which I might not believe that it belonged anywhere else. But because I was pushed to put it outward, that changed what I thought my voice could do, right? Because I would see people now crying in an audience or cheering in an audience or laughing. And that reaction of, oh, they can actually see me. These words are actually being heard. Did something for my writing, because I was hyper aware now of who my audience was or what an audience was. It did something to my revising, because I could tell when a poem fell flat and I had to, okay, I have to go back in because I don't think this is really hitting the way I thought it would hit. And that can happen in the classroom. I would do a poetry slam after every one of my poetry sessions, units. And my students would write a poem and they would memorize that poem. And it would be about football or the Steelers or their neighborhoods or their moms or being undocumented or all of these different things that no one had asked them. And then they would say it in front of their classmates. And I would invite parents in and I would invite administrators in, and we would turn my classroom into a cafe. And there was a different pressure when all of a sudden these students realized, like, oh, I have to really show up, right? And my students who maybe weren't my strongest readers or my strongest writers were sometimes my strongest performers, right? They were people who were writing songs on the low when we didn't know, right? And so I was really moved by the ways in which I could see different aspects of my students by just providing them a different way to showcase. And that can happen through storytelling. It can happen through poetry. If you're doing science, you can like have a student write a monologue through like one of the periodic elements, like how does that element act and be, but just giving them opportunities to think about bringing writing and bringing their bodies and their full selves into the room, right? That I think we need to see them, because so often they don't think they're seen, and we need to hear them and what they have to say. I taught at a juvenile detention facility, and I would show up every Monday, and every Monday my students are like, oh no, it's the poetry lady again. And at the end of every session, they would be like, wait, are you coming back? And this weird moment where they didn't want to be vulnerable and they didn't want to write. And then when they were done writing, I would make them all get up and recite, right? And it was optional, but they had the opportunity. And detention centers are difficult because it's a really scary place to be vulnerable, because it can be used against you, right? And when the poetry lady leaves, that safe space can be gone. And my students would still do it, and they would be brave. And I was moved by how many of them felt like they had never been able to say things out loud. And how many of the other students in the classroom would nod along and would say, I've had that same experience. And it forged something between them. And that these were the students who were dropping out, who were runaways, who didn't have good grades, who were not good students, but who could show a piece of themselves and feel valued, right? And so in thinking about student voices, I was thinking about closing out with one of my own poems about that experience, but that would like disprove everything I've just said. So I actually want to close out with a piece by one of my former students who was you know, in a detention center, and the prompt was, what is an assumption that people make about you? And so she wrote, the poem is titled The Problem Child. She's the girl everyone talks down about. She's the girl that makes bad decisions. She's the girl that hangs out with the crowd. She's the girl that fights and curses. She's the girl they call disrespectful. But what no one seems to notice is that she's the girl that's smart. She's the girl that takes up for others. She's just outspoken and doesn't seem to know how to control it. She's the girl who loves hard and doesn't mind a broken heart because she thinks she's used to them. She's the girl who loves to cheer, have fun, and do girly things. She's the girl who loves to play and listen to music, but still no one seems to notice. So she just continues being the problem child. And I hope that in my classrooms, the students who have taken on the role of problem children or of quiet or of what I do outside doesn't belong here, I hope they know that their full selves are always welcome in my classroom. And if nothing else, that you all, you know, take into account, like, how are the ways that we can welcome, you know, all parts of our children into the room. So thank you so much for, like, having me here. And I learned so much by listening to Phil and Bemi, and I hope that, you know, we'll continue to have this conversation online.
I have to tell you, I couldn't put the camera on because I'm literally over here just like crying my eyes out. I'm just totally blown away. I literally have no words to say to all three of you. Just thank you. Well, I mean, first, Phil, you didn't tell me that this is what was happening today, so thank you. I mean, every one of you together, and then this amazing connection with Phil and Elizabeth. Just your message of the amount of power that we as adults, we as educators have in helping kids and young adults see themselves and believe in who they are. I'm thinking of Bemi, when you said, you know, so many kids say, when I say, okay, I'm like the writing lady, it's time to write, and then they say, well, can I? That's important for us as teachers to know that we're setting something up by accident or possibly on purpose, but we're setting something up that has our children believe that they always have to ask our permission and not take those risks. And I mean, Phil, you continue to pay gifts out to all of us, your advocacy for all children and all people through your books and through your work. And to know that you played a role in the incredible Elizabeth Acevedo and her amazing work. I mean, as Elizabeth, you were saying that, I'm just thinking of like the one of your poems, the video of you walking through Washington, D.C., and just how you use your voice to give others voice, and just knowing this connection of your teacher right here who helped to be a part of that. Thank you all. I'm going to go on and on, but we need to move on. But truly, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Thanks, Chris. Great day.
Yes,
Great conference. Yep.
Enjoy, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.
So for those of you that are sticking with us throughout today, you'll just go to the edcollabgathering.com in order to see follow-up sessions, or you can follow us at the EdCollab on Twitter, where we'll have sessions coming up in this next session one. Amazing workshops coming up. So first one, Joellen McCarthy, Melissa Stewart, Sarah Albee, and Lori Griffin Burns. Amazing nonfiction authors are talking with Joellen, our book ambassador, about nonfiction joy. We also have EdCollab member Dana Stakowiak and her wife, an amazing professor, Sylvia C. Betez, sharing literacy classrooms as emancipatory spaces, enacting radical love in times of hate. Well, this day is going to be so awesome. Then we have Michelle Henkin for, if you're a middle school teacher with us today, on how do the choices we make impact the world. And this session will be awesome because it's blending science and English through an investigative journalism unit. So that's a must-see. And then our EdCollab member and friend, and Maggie, I'm on my way. I'm coming over right now to set this up. Maggie Beatty-Roberts will be sharing some research that she and a colleague wrote about just recently in NCTE's Voices from the Middle on independent reading journeys, helping students discover and celebrate their own ways of thinking, and some amazing work that they've done in secondary classrooms to really help kids have their own authentic responses to their reading and really have this kind of journey of thought across time. So there's all of those. And then lastly, please do at some point today, stop over at our website, gathering.theeducatorcollaborative.com/charity. And there you will see the 3 charities that our 3 amazing presenters chose for us today, including a story of why each one of them feels personally connected and compelled by that work. If you were crying this morning like I was, or felt inspired or felt challenged, pay that incredible joy forward to these charities that are helping so many more children and adults do that same thing, have those same feelings. Your work today will matter a lot. And if you are on the agenda page or on the Invite Your EduFriends page, either one of those, you'll see a link to adding a badge to your Twitter handle, which I'm going to try to pull up and you totally won't see it. Oh, let's see if we can do it. Okay, maybe, let's see if you can see it on here. Boom. Okay, you get that cool little badge right there that says, I pledge to pay the joy forward. And that's a way that you can let everyone know that you are dedicating and paying forward some of your joy for today to some amazing charity groups. So just head over to the agenda page or Invite Your EduFriends and you can click on it right there. All right, everyone, head back to our website, find your next session, enjoy the rest of your day. And again, thank you to our incredible authors this morning. The world has some messy stuff going on, but we have a bright future because, as Phil said, children aren't just our future, they're here right now. Thank you all, everyone. Enjoy your day.